Hello, assalamu alaikum everyone. So this is Dr. Naeem Hayat, and today we will be actually discussing about the literature review, the second part that is more related to the writing of the literature review. So last week we discussed about the literature review, from where we can actually search the literature review, and now this week we're discussing about the writing. So the learning outcome that we like to achieve today, that is able to understand the type of literature review. So we will be discussing about the three type of the literature review that we can actually extract by reading, or the collection of the literature that we actually able to extract. Another learning objective that we have today, that is know the way to write narrative literature. So actually we focus most in the narrative literature because the other type are actually quite distinct and having a different purpose and the method available for writing. So here we just actually focus on the narrative literature review, then the stages of the narrative literature review, and what should be covered while we are writing or documenting the narrative literature. So the three type of the literature review that we can have or distinguish, that is narrative literature review, systematic literature review, meta-analysis literature. Narrative, that actually we collect the literature and actually we read and then we narrate the literature as it comes to us, and with a purpose. Again, for a purpose, we need to describe and write the literature differently. But more importantly, that is actually the narrative literature review that we are focusing on this session. Then the systematic literature review. So in a narrative literature review, it is up to us that there is no hard and fast rule to actually select, shortlist, and then actually read and document the literature. It is actually purposefully decided by the researcher. But when we are actually going for a systematic literature review, so we have a question at hand, then we build a query from the databases of Scopus and the Web of Science. Then for a time period, we decide, then actually we take out the paper as we like from a certain timeline, maybe 10 year or 5 year in a certain topic, and only Web of Science or maybe the Scopus databases are utilized. And then actually after extracting, we actually read and then actually make some understanding about towards the literature that is already available. Then maybe we focus about the shortcoming or the future course of the action that need to be taken into the literature. So systematic literature review have a different field of study right now, where we have a concrete question or the objective at hand, and only we go for the Scopus or Web of Science databases with a timeline at hand, and then actually we run a query, and then actually after extracting the paper, a preliminary kind of the evaluation, then actually reading the abstract, and then actually we still eliminate the paper, then actually we go for the final number of the paper that are available to us in full reading, then actually we come out of some understanding after the reading. So systematic literature review, right now we have a Prisma framework that is available to actually run the query, then shortlist the paper, and then actually report every 6 stages of the systematic literature. Another type of the literature review, that is meta-analysis. So in a meta-analysis, that we are actually going for the paper that are empirical, normally where the data is utilized to frame the relationship between the variable or maybe the regression association that is influencing the x variable, y variable that is actually taken out. So in a meta-analysis, we actually run a grand regression. So all the paper that are reporting the beta value of the x variable or the input variable on the outcome variable. So they are isolated, and then actually with the available paper with the empirical analysis or the empirical data, then we run based on the beta values of the variable, then we actually run a grand regression. So the analysis become different because purposefully we only select the quantitative paper. So systematic literature review and meta-analysis literature review are a different kind of the literature review, so certainly not covered today. But systematic literature review and meta-analysis actually follow the PRISMA framework, where there is a six-step process where the paper are selected, then actually shortlisted and maybe eliminated, and then actually we come up with the full list of the paper. After reading that, we actually write down the document of the literature. And the purposefully we done this systematic literature review or meta-analysis uh, so to actually come up with the shortcomings that are reported are obvious in the literature so that the future course of action for the research fulfilling the gap and the gap identification can be. So systematic literature review and meta-analysis literature review are the two different type of the literature. Narrative literature review, so actually there is no hard and fast rule. We actually just follow what paper availability. It's up to us. Maybe we go for the Scopus or maybe we go for the Web of Science databases. Then actually we collect the paper from them and then actually read it. And then document the literature, how and what is reported and how that actually frame our mind towards the understanding the literature that is available to us. So this session actually more concentrate on the narrative literature. So our obvious question comes to us, why write a literature? So again, we read, that's good enough, but why to write? So the writing actually demonstrate our understanding of the literature by the writer. And then actually we discuss as a writer the literature in a way that actually how the critical point of view or the critical understanding can be built by the reader. So first of all, the writing of literature review help us to establish our strength, our understanding while we are discussing the topic or the literature. It demonstrates that how much we are able to critically evaluate the academic. So when we say critical evaluate, so certainly there are different stream of knowledge, different stream of thought, theories, emergence of the definition, and maybe controversies that may be evolved over the period of the time in the literature that are documented. So how well we are understandable towards the demonstration of the critical evaluation of the literature. It demonstrates that how the researcher understand the work and the other academic research and how that research is related to the topic. So writing of the literature review purposefully established that how and what are the definition available to the topic or the concept in the literature. And we must be evaluating so that we can maybe creating a gap or maybe justifying our argument in a way for building the hypothesis or claiming our argument. So that's why we need to write the literature review. Another thing that we need to be careful about the writing, the literature review should be comprised with these elements. So when we are writing, so we must actually think about these things. What should be writing? What should we be writing? An overview of the subject, issue of theory under consideration along with the objective of the literature. So sometime, again, I will discuss later on. So sometime only we are discussing the theories that are available in the topic. Sometimes we are actually discussing about the emergence of the topic. Sometimes we are discussing about the controversies in the topic or in the literature. So it's more related to the objective that we have at hand. And certainly we need to be understandable that how we need to be writing the literature. So first thing that we must be actually understanding about the subject overview, the theories under consideration along with the objective of the literature. Division of work under review into categories. So what these categories can be, those in support of particular position, those against, and those offering alternative of these entire. So it means maybe when you are having a good abundance of literature at hand, so you find the similarity. You can find dissimilarities, and certainly you can actually come across the different mindset or thought in the literature. So it means the literature must be written in a way that reflects the understanding of the writer, that what are the people or what are the issues that can be assembled in one category or one type? What are the scholar or the commentaries or the paper that is one thought and the alternate opportunities or option given to us? Explanation, another you can say while we are documenting and writing, another area that we need to concentrate, explanation of how each work is similar and how it varies. So most of us actually understand that there may be a literature matrix that we build, where actually we list out the paper and then actually the objective, the definition, the work done, the method applied. So in this way, we can actually understand the similarities and the variance that is available in the literature, and then we document that how and why one scholar actually have a difference of opinion than the maybe the different other scholar. Or maybe sometime we are discussing about the historical route, the emergence of the topic from the seminal work, from the day one, that what is the topic and how it evolved over the period of the time, what new thoughts come across, and how the differences between the scholar are actually giving rise to the different model theories and as well as the understanding of the application of the topic. So in the conclusion, as we actually mix and match the pieces of the work and consider their argument and most convincingly the opinion and the great contribution of understanding development of the research. So certainly every research area have some probable gaps. So while discussing and documenting these literature, so we are able to maybe understanding and contributing towards the finding a way to solve the problem or the issue in the literature. So this is a broadly a writing mechanism that we follow in the literature. So when we are actually writing the literature review, so normally we follow these 6 type of the literature writing that we mostly saw in the research articles and sometime in thesis as well. So the 6 types are chronological, timeline. So when the first work published, who is the author who actually convened the idea and from where they get the idea of that emergence of a topic and up to today. So it means it gives us a history of the topic. Then by publication, so sometime we actually write the literature by the publication. So maybe the publication that established in the literature, maybe let's say from the seminal work or the critical work, and maybe on the type of the method applied. Or maybe sometime we can see that the journal publication that are only by the top rank journal, or maybe only by one journal, like you can say in Academy of Marketing, Academy of Management. So you can actually, they have these kind of publication, the paper that are published only these 2 top journals, so they only take and then they take it. So maybe another type of writing is trend. So how the school of thought that may be emerged into the literature or literature of a certain topic. So what these trends are and what these the thoughts that actually we developed and evolved in the trends towards the topic. Like you can say when we are discussing about the green behavior, so what are the trend, how it is emerged, how it affect, what is the role of the community, values, the geographical location, the education and sociological factors, psychological factors. So these can be covered in the thematic way that what are the themes that can be emerged when we are actually documenting the literature like a theme, thematic. So it means categorizing the topic in the research area by the themes that maybe emerged already documented, and maybe we are adding some more themes towards the literature. Another type of the writing practice that we can understand that can actually be observed in the literature that is methodological. So a normal frame of reference that is used, that is the qualitative study, quantitative study, a mixed method study. So in this way, we actually see some of the literature are divided, that what are the quantitative studies, how they are actually giving rise to the understanding towards the topic, and sometimes the analytical technique utilized. So these are some of the methodological domain, how we divide these studies based on the method that is applied to the literature, applied in the paper and build the literature, like quantitative, qualitative, or mixed. Similarly, sometime while we are actually writing literature, so question for future research. So maybe you have access to the paper, maybe systematic literature review or meta-analysis or narrative analysis, where the future research questions are available. So you are only writing that what are the future research questions that our research, scholars are communicating, are establishing to work for. So in this way, these are some of the 6 types of the literature review writing. One way is the date-wise or chronological by publication, and then actually maybe the trends, the topic, the subtopic that maybe emerge from the certain research area, then the thematic are the themes or major themes that are discussed in the literature and what the future themes there may come across. Then the methodological domain, that how the study apply the different method to understand the topic. And the lastly, it is the research question for future. So it means they are developing new ways or topic so that to lead the topic in the future. So they are suggesting the research future questions. So stages of literature review writing. So again, when we are writing, so normally before writing, that start a problem evaluation. So it is actually, it doesn't require a writing, but certainly when we are actually doing a research literature review, so a problem formulation, which topic or field is being examined and what are the component issues. Literature search, finding material relevant to that area, that maybe you go for a Google search, maybe you go for a Scopus database or Web of Science database, and maybe you actually predefine that from which sources you think that are more appropriate to extract the data. Only maybe a highly ranked journal in the topic area, or maybe any journal. But I always suggest that go for a quality journal. So the quality journal actually they publish after a quality criteria check. So it means normally the publication are quite good to replicate or good to. Otherwise, in a normal, you can say below average journal, so you can find the low quality paper, which doesn't actually conform to many of the standards that what the Web of Science or the Scopus are actually looking for. So maybe if you read a poor quality journal paper, so that may be detrimental towards the understanding that one want to build up towards literature. So data evaluation is the third stage of the literature review. So determining which literature make a significant contribution to understanding of the topic. So that here we need to actually make some elimination criteria, that which journal paper may be included and which journal paper that we may not require. So a general criteria which I follow and I was told to follow as well. So mostly go for a only 5-year-old paper. Don't go for more than 5-year-old paper. Go for Web of Science journals only. And if you're unable to find the topic area in the Web of Science, at least don't go beyond or less than the scope. So that is one of the evaluation criteria for it. Analysis and the interpretation, discussing the finding and the conclusion of the pertinent literature. So what are the topic area, what are the understanding they already built, and what are the future course of action, or maybe that is relevant to your study that what you are proposing, we need to talk about. That how you come across the gap on which you are basing or on which you are making study. You already made and then actually justifying only the study. So what actually is more related to the narrative literature review. So what areas are one we must cover or what must add in the literature writing? The accepted fact of the area, that is definition of the topic. are the issue and how that issue is important so that we come across while we are reading the literature. The popular opinion. So what it means, it may influence negative, positive, it may not influence, and in what criteria that in. So these are some common understanding that we already have from the literature. The main variable, which are already discussed, and how they define the variable and how the literature actually understand the variable influence or effect on the outcome variable, if that is the topic area we are studying. The relationship between the concept and the variable. So we need to understand the concept and variable are two. So concept is a broader understanding and the variable is the operationalization of the concept. So maybe there are multiple variables in one concept that can be utilized and how you select one variable to operationalize the concept. So these are some of the critical things that we need to keep in mind, and then actually need to operationalize the concept with the help of the variable. So we must understand the variable definition so that all the, mostly in quantitative study, so all the variables must be operationalized in a manner that you have a good established scale to operationalize. Otherwise, if you are going for a qualitative study, so certainly we need the concept definition. May not be an operational variable to utilize, but at least a concept that is quite fundamentally written, documented, and operationalized studies. Shortcoming of the existing literature, so that is the crux or the outcome that we want to achieve. So we must cover that what is not available, what is the shortcoming, because that's how we actually establish that there is a gap and we are making a study out of that gap, so we can claim our contribution. So mostly the Web of Science or the Scopus journal, they are looking for the shortcoming or the gap and the claim by the writer that you are contributing. And if you say that I'm contributing marginally, so most of the good journals doesn't. So otherwise, maybe we need to go for a low category journal to publish our article. But that's why shortcoming or gap of the literature is very important to document so that to establish a need and then actually fulfilling these needs by the research you already have. Limitation of the method used in the existing study. So that is one of the gaps that we identify. Most of the studies are qualitative, up to my understanding, up to the researcher understanding. So the qualitative studies are missing or are less, are scarce. So that's why we are suggesting to do a more in-depth qualitative study. So these are some of the limitation or the shortcoming that we report in the literature writing, and then actually we bank on it and utilize to establish our study. And then claim a contribution. The relevance of your research, so we must actually create a case. The research is fulfilling. It may be the, you can say, if you are working on the sustainable issues, like you can say how the circular economy is important and how the circular economy concept help the environment and how the circular economy concept can benefit the industry as well to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So some way we need to relate the relevance of the research to the word as well as to the justification why beyond the scholarly work, how it actually helps to achieve the sustainability in practical work. So lastly, we must cover about the suggestion for the future research. So these are some of the things that we need to cover. It looks very difficult. Certainly it's difficult, but we need to understand after having the literature at hand. So we must understand what are the accepted norms or the definition, what are the main variables that are utilized, the relationship between the concept and the variable, the shortcoming, that is the crux of literature review, then the limitation method or the existing finding. That actually, if you understand, I discuss about the research gap, so I actually discuss about the 6 to 7 different research gaps that we need to document. So these are the evidences we can actually suggest that there are inconsistent finding. There may be the method not applied, or maybe only one type of method can be utilized. Maybe the contextual understanding need to be built. or maybe the other side of the area that may be consumer and supplier. So in this way, the other type of the study can be developed to understand the topic area. So these are some of the things that we should cover while we are writing. So while we are writing, so we need to actually keep a balance between there are three things that we need to keep in mind, and again give a kind of a writer touch while we are writing. The first thing, the language focus. So normally when we are reading the other people work, so the one way of writing is a direct quote or citation of the quote or the definition that is provided by the in the literature by a researcher, or maybe paraphrase. So we need to keep a balance between the direct quote and paraphrase. Avoid too much direct quote. So it means if we all take what is already published or established by one scholar, it means what is my contribution. So it means if you take one statement from the previous literature, so at least you discuss 2 to 3 lines what it means. It means you actually add yourself. So avoid too much direct quote, and actually the word sentence or the verb tense used quite intelligent. So when you are citing a specific other finding, it means the previously established fact. So use the past. So it means a scholar already demonstrated or established that there is a significant positive effect. So it means it is already established. So use the past sentence tense. So when you are actually giving a accepted fact that is actually still available or still present, so we use the present tense. That is uh, the literature demonstrate, or the literature find, or there are established fact. So these things are actually we use the present tense. So when we are actually using the previous work of the people, so we actually utilize the past tense. So when actually we are giving accepted fact or normal fact at hand, so we are actually using the present. When we are citing several other or making a general statement, again, a general statement means it is true mostly. So use the present tense. Have shown, have found, little research has been done. So it means it is a normal fact that is available to us. So that's why we are using the present tense. But if it is a fact that is documented by a previous scholar or researcher, so then actually we always use the past tense. And when we are actually documenting the gap, so normally we use the future tense. So maybe we use the present tense as well because we say it is quite urgent, it is quite important to look out for these things. And maybe you can say what will be done so that maybe in a future. So these are things what writing will keep in mind. Another thing that is very important, critically evaluate who, how, when, where, why, and what. So it is normally called 5W and 1H. So it means that who, how, what, why, and where some fact is documented, and how it is established that this fact is appropriate. So reading and just documenting the literature is not enough in the scholarly writing. So more what is required, that is going in depth and evaluate each fact. Again, we not document each and every fact or the publication that is available to us, but whatever we are utilizing to establish something, so we must evaluate, critically evaluate. Just not borrow the idea from the other people and just actually keep in your hand. As a scholar, we must debate, we must evaluate and critically evaluate, accept or maybe negate, and sometimes we partially accept or partially negate. So as a writer, so we must actually evaluate the literature, not just report it. Okay, not just saying that X say that this is the fact, or X say that is X, Y, X influence Y, or there is a relationship between X and Y. Also establish why there is a relationship. And when they report, there is a relationship. Who are the respondents who actually established? What are their method of the analysis? Maybe we say in an empirical study, the scholar X actually reported that there is a relationship between the A and B. Or maybe they are able to establish that the association may not be significant for the people who are working in a developed nation. So this kind of critical evaluation and actually adding ourselves is very. So one way to make sure that you do this to ask question for, of the text. So it means you actually make the text that you are utilizing to write your literature questionable. So because you read, you evaluate, and you actually argument on the literature. So that's why it's very important to critically evaluate. And maybe in critical evaluating, we contrast and argue for sometime against and sometime in favor of one of the uh, thought or the concern that we are showing. Another important area, management of sources. It means the references that from where we are taking the literature. It means the literature that we are reading. So we actually must build a list of it. And that list actually help us in writing and actually appropriately sourcing the argument and the quotation sometimes what we are taking from the literature. So when we are reading, so we must not forget to take note. Not to take note in a way that what the people write, take note in a way that from what source that's coming. What are their words? What are their arguments? What are their critical thoughts that I actually we need to make a note. So a normal technique of note taking that maybe we take a cornell note or maybe right now the softwares are available or maybe in PDF Acrobat, PDF reader. So these things we can actually take the note out of it and we can actually do narrative qualitative analysis out of it. So taking appropriate note is very important because later on maybe you are unable to track the source and unable to understand why a researcher is making this argument. So one way when we are actually doing the literature, so we must make a literature matrix. So and again, I actually do this, and again, I suggest to all people that when you are planning a one paper in a topic area, don't plan only one paper. At least plan two, three, or more paper, so that the references or the effort that you utilized can be beneficial in publishing or as, and not publishing, at least documenting and creating more than two, three documents. So it means if you work in a one area, so that create a kind of asset that you have a list of the paper that are available to you, and actually you build on the list, and you easily actually cite and refer to the sources that are available. So it means when you are planning a paper, so at least plan two, three, four paper in the topic area so that you can actually have a source available and all the effort you put on, they bring the more value. So note taking and making the summaries and these questions, or maybe you can say making a literature matrix, that's quite good enough. So these are some of the things that what we we need to take a note while we are writing the literature. So a few days back, actually, I am looking for one thing, so I want to share it with everyone here. That a few days back, I'm looking at a website that actually quite helped. So Science Space. Science Space is a free website, AI-based website. So if you go there, so you can easily find the literature. And for you, actually, it create a kind of table, literature table, which you can actually utilize. So it is work like Google query. So if you actually just query the role of entrepreneurship, like you can say one query I ran a few days back. So it actually give you all the literature that is available. Then actually you can sort and can actually give you the a short summary of the paper. Then the conclusion. So there are different other things that you can add. The method utilized, the survey of the literature, the limitation, and you can actually add different areas that you like to work on, like summary, abstract, summarize, introduction, So these things can be easily available in this AI-based application, and it helps actually to manage our. So that's what I like to share today. So this is all from my side. So hopefully you people are able to get something out of it. So today we actually cover the second part of the lecture. So the last week I was discussing about the searching the document literature, and then actually today I just discussed about the documenting and writing of the literature. So I start with the three type of the literature, what I think that are available: narrative, systematic literature review, and meta-analysis. And the other thing that we need to keep in mind while documenting the literature, that we can actually use a chronological, publication, trend, thematic, methodological, or future research questions. So the four stages of the literature review are problem formulation, literature search, data evaluation, analysis, and interpretation. And the analysis and interpretation actually make us knowledgeable about the available literature and actually the shortcoming or the contrast or the controversies that are available in literature. And then actually when we are writing the literature for a qualitative study, empirical study, so normally we cover, but certainly when we are writing the structure, systematic literature review or meta, so again, our thought or our mindset is different, so we write it. So when actually we're writing for an empirical paper or literature, so accepted facts must be established, a popular opinion must be given. So actually paper are more appropriately published or accepted when we are talking about the popular opinion. Only few journals are that are accepting the controversies, but mostly journals are not accepting these kind of problematic or controversial issues. So the relationship between the concept of variable and shortcoming of the literature must be documented. That where you actually establish the shortcoming, and that where you can establish your mark or contribution that you are making. So while we are writing, so we get a balance between the direct citation and discussion. We must critically evaluate and then actually we document in a way so that the sources can be utilized and reduce our. So that's all for the day. If you have any questions, so please feel free to ask. So otherwise, this video is available for other people as well online on the provided YouTube channel and source. So hopefully that will help. So I will be here for next 2-3 minutes so that if you have anything to ask, please feel free to comment or ask.
Assalamualaikum, Doktor. Did you hear my voice?
Hello.
Hello,
I'm
Doctor.
unable to hear you. Can you please come again, speak again?
Oh, okay. Now you hear me?
Yes, much better.
Okay. It's just it's not basically a question, but I think in your opinion, basically most of the student do not a student. I think been suggested to do LR in matrix. In metric table. Is there is it good or not? Because I think when some of us when doing the metric table is quite use some time. It use times, and we only for that we use about 1 month just to create that metric tables. That's it, my question, Doctor. So what is your opinion? Is there other way that we can do the metric tables, or there any other way that's good in terms of how we find our literature?
Again, question is very appropriate. The problem mostly actually in our practices, like you can say in Malaysia, we are actually working in different divergent research area. That create problem. Like you can say we do our PhD in one topic area, and over the period of the time we are developing new interest, and actually we move towards the other area, and the metrics or the literature that is available that actually become unusable or actually having no worth for us. So as a PhD or master degree student, so certainly that literature review, because they're working for 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year, or maybe more than that in one topic area, so that literature metrics or the literature available to them is quite useful. But one way that we can actually use the literature, if we are working in the same area but developing the literature as the new literature is coming on, so that literature metrics still very much relevant. But we need to think on that how that the literature or the reading that I already have, how to utilize in writing. Because the problem is that we have too much in our brain, but how to actually document so that you can be claimed as a scholar. Because whatever you have in a reading in your head, it's considered to be a good. I'm not saying it's bad, but again, as our scholarly respect only be achieved when we have a good writing, the publication in high rank journals and the citation. So these are the criteria for a researcher. But I'm not saying that the research matrix is problematic or wrong. It's very good. But the problem is that we are actually developing new research interest and we are moving away from all already what we have in the literature matrix. That actually become unusable, and that's how actually our effort drained. So one way that you must actually keep the interest alive in the topic area, but certainly after some time you want to move on to the other topic area. But still, that's a human effort. I think so. The literature matrix is available to anyone, so that is quite helpful. So I want to hear one experience with what I have in UK when I'm doing my master degree. So mostly the supervisor actually provide you the list of the paper, and maybe sometime they provide you their own literature matrix. But you need to look on how, because the finding a gap is actually quite important, not collecting the facts. So that how the supervisor is actually quite playing an important role, actually directing and supervising in a way that how to read and contemplate and evaluate the literature that is available. Because all the literature is available to us in front of us. But it's up to us, our capacity to evaluate and come up with a topic gap so that we can actually formulate the research for us and maybe for future as well. So one suggestion, what I am thinking I am working on, so develop 2, 3 interest area relevant to your topic. Just move on with that and don't actually drain your effort that what you put in 3 to 4 year or 5 year for a PhD and all the literature that you have, or literature matrix you have. So keep intact so that it can be able. So that's what I can suggest. But building a literature matrix certainly require effort. But right now these AI tools are available. I think so that can help us to done these kind of things. But again, the problem is when we are writing the literature, so we are not much critical. So the capacity to be critical you can't actually achieve by writing, but to think critical, what we can actually achieve the critical in our writing. So that is my advice. Hopefully, I can answer the question.
Okay, Doctor, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so I think so that's all for the day. So I take a leave now. So take care. Assalamu alaikum and have a good day ahead of you.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome.